Riley, all in all, it's been quite a positive week for West Ham. You know, we've on the back of what was a very, very devastating result against Newcastle, West Ham responded pretty well, gone away from home in the Premier League, got the 3 points. And West Ham now are sitting with a bit of breathing room, a bit of flexibility now in terms of us trying to, avoid the drop. And at last, there's a feeling of like there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, you feel. So West Ham fans, ultimately, myself included, pretty happy, pretty good plays. However, at the end of the game against Fulham, it was quite evident there was a lot of anti-Moyes chanting going on. In fact, there was a banner that came out at the end saying Moyes out. Now, the reason we want to do this video, we don't want to slag off David Moyes and go into the details of the season and talk about all the issues that are surrounding selections and all this tactics and stuff. We're not doing that. We're here just to really talk about the fan base and where their feelings are, because it actually has felt like for quite a long time, like Riley was just saying before we started recording, that it's quite split. It's been quite a bit 50-50. Some people have been, fair enough, give him a chance and all this kind of stuff. But for the away fans now to be quite turning on Moyes, that to me spells that I think the fan base have had enough and do want to change. What was your feelings, Riley? Was you surprised to see that at the end of the game?
No, I think Moyes has sort of made his bed, isn't he? The amount of hits he's put at the fans, the amount of times he's basically made subtle comments along the lines of like, well, we've just had a great 2 years, so, stick. When he says that, it's not necessarily like we've just had a great 2 years, we're going to get there soon, just got to stick with us this season. It's more be like, well, we've had a good 2 years, so, be a bit grateful, don't just turn on me instantly, which I think is just stupid. Oh, sorry, apologies. So I think the amount of shots he's put at the fans, it was inevitable that the fans are eventually going to turn on him. We're playing crap football. He's making very questionable decisions. And then instead of doing what Rice does, what other players do, and sharing in our sort of dismay, he just kind of has a pop at the fans. It was going to be inevitable that eventually all the fans would turn on him. But there's still a very select few. But I think throughout the season, it's been very 50-50. A lot of people are willing to give Moyes a chance, are willing to see what, even myself included, I think before you, I was saying, look, I think we should give Moyes a go. And you were like, no, I think he should leave. It has been very split all season. But now I think there's like a handful of, West Ham fans that would sit there and say they still want Moyes in a job at the moment. And I think a lot of them probably are a little bit deluded. So it was only a matter of time before that was going to happen. But the fact that the away support, what is meant to be the core of West Ham, West Ham's Claret Blue Army over land and sea, is now showing their annoyance at Moyes, does go to show that it's obviously quite a big thing at the club at the moment.
Yeah, I do. I think the fans have now turned. I think that is the problem. Like you say, I think it's been a build-up. It's been brewing for a long time. These little comments and digs at the fans has just not helped his case at all. It actually, to me, shows a man that's on its way out of a club. It reminds me of the Sam Allardyce days, these little pops at the fans and stuff. It's almost like, do you remember when Allardyce left and he was dismissed, I think, on the last day, I think we finished mid-table, wherever it was. And I think at the end of the interview, it was like, it's rumours that you've gone. He's like, oh, yeah, no, I'm going. I know I'm being let go and all this kind of stuff. I get the feeling that's where this is going with Moyes a little bit, although I don't think the club necessarily want to do that. From what I understand it, from what X has told us, the ownership is still behind Moyes. They desperately want him to stay and do well. But they've obviously, I think the support of him is now dwindling. Because let's be honest, it's just not improving, does it? He had so much opportunity to really get this season up and running. It just hasn't happened. But, fair play, against Fulham, he got the result. But what's quite interesting about that as well, not only the banners at the end and the chanting, there was a moment in the game as well when I think he made a couple of substitutions. And West Ham obviously were winning at that point. And there was a massive chant of, you don't know what you're doing. And that was more the West Ham fans. And I think you're getting sacked in the morning. And we're winning. I think that just shows where the fan base are with David Moyes now. For me personally, right, like we've said, we talked about this enough till we're blue in the face of David Moyes. I do think his time is up, but I'll always be very grateful to David Moyes. Always, I think he has ultimately been a pretty good manager for West Ham. He has been okay. I mean, he's come in, he's kept the club up twice. He's taken the club to Europe twice. These things can't be ignored. But the problem is, I think that's where the problem. He's hit that ceiling. He's kind of got as far as he can. And I just find that. Probably when you, in the grand scheme of it, when you look at the Premier League, you look at where other clubs are going, you look at the likes of Brighton's and Brentford's and all these clubs that are manoeuvring their way into, fighting to be in the top half of the Premier League, Newcastle. There's one common denominator they've all got is young managers. They've all got these young up and coming, fresh managers, fresh ideas. Whereas I just think you look at West Ham and we just look so old hat and so dated, the way we approach games and the way we set up. And it's not even David Moyes, mate, is it? For me, it's actually the ownership as well. I think we're just so old school. Everything's so, yeah, we've moved on. The game's moved on. We're still back in 2001. You know, we're still sitting around those years. This is where we see where David Moyes was at Everton. Do you know what I mean? I look at our squad and I just think, God, we could do a real injection of youth and a bit of more of bit of vibrancy around the club. And that's all it is for me with Moyes. I don't want to. I never really hate him and be angry at him that much. I just think his time's up. But what's really obviously interesting is now that you do feel from that the fans have turned. They've had enough. Like. Do you think that's fair that the fans have turned on Moyes? Do you think he deserves that, Riley?
Well, I do feel for Moyes a little bit, because one thing that people don't actually look at in football is momentum. You know, there's a reason that when a manager leaves a club and the caretaker manager comes in, you know, every single team seems to have this like little manager bounce where they've got a new caretaker manager in and they've, you know, the prospects of having a new manager and a sort of fresh start. And it's why a lot of clubs do it. It's why a lot of clubs sit there and sack their manager, because realistically, there's no reason why next season David Moyes couldn't get West Ham back to where they were or back to what they were playing. But the issue is momentum. When you've got that momentum with you and everything's going well and, you know, you're doing what you need to do, it's very easy to keep it. But then once you've lost it, you start, you know, you lose the fans, you lose the dressing room. You kind of you have to admit defeat, you know, and it's funny because, you know, I think Leicester would take David Moyes at the moment, but and I think West Ham would take Brendan Rodgers, but a Leicester City fan will sit there and tell you that Brendan Rodgers is out of ideas, he's useless, he's clueless, and a West Ham fan will tell you the same about David Moyes. Same with Graham Potter. Most Chelsea fans I spoke to were quite happy to see him go. I don't know a single West Ham fan that wouldn't be begging to have Graham Potter at the club. So, you know, sometimes it is about momentum and it's about having just a fresh sort of change of pace. So I do feel for Moyes a little bit, but obviously he has sort of made his own bed a little bit. And seeing how we've gone from, you know, 6th and 7th to relegation sort of football, seeing as he spent £180 million, the treatment of some of the players he's given, you know, Flynn Downs doesn't get a chance, the youth doesn't get a chance. You know, like I say, the pops at the fans. He's made his own bed a little bit. No hard feelings towards him, but I just do feel like it's time for the whole club just to have a bit of a change, a fresh face out, you know, and like you say, having a young, exciting manager, potentially someone along the lines of maybe like a Scott Parker or a Graham Potter, someone, you know, Vincent Kompany, just Michael Carrick, you know, someone who's just a bit new with a bit of fresh ideas instead of just going to the same recycle managers of, you know, Rafa Benitez and Sean Dyche and, you know, Brendan Rodgers. You know, what's the point in getting a has-been? We might as well, I mean, from the next season, we're going to be building from the ground up. You know, we're not going to go straight back up to Europe. We're going to be rebuilding the club and rebuilding the team the way we need to. Not necessarily by getting new players in, but new system and just sort of a new feel around the club. Someone like Graham Potter, someone like Michael Carrick. I know obviously Kompany would not come to us. I think he's got a good project at Burnley, but someone like Vincent Kompany would be great to have at the club. Just a bit of freshness, you know. Like you say, it just does feel a bit stale at the moment, and unfortunately, Moyes is one of the main culprits of that.
And I'll tell you what, now I'm going to counter this, and I'm just sort of playing devil's advocate here, because this is a debate that Dave and X have quite a fair bit, and no doubt they're probably going to have another debate about this. And it's quite difficult to argue this, because this is where I struggle with the whole situation. Right, I've always been quite a big Moyes fan, really. Ultimately, I've always wanted him to do well. I liked him when he came back to the club. I thought he did well, and I have supported him. You know, and I appreciate we had videos in here criticising him over the course of the season, and rightly so, because we've been poor. But ultimately, in the back of my mind, thinking he'll turn this around. Hopefully, he'll turn this around. But the argument, I suppose, is, and I think this is quite a valid one. If at the start of the season, someone said to you, West Ham finishing 13th in the Premier League, let's say, and winning the Europa Conference League and getting into Europe again, would you take that? Would you take that as a good season? I genuinely think 99% of West Ham fans would have bitten your hand off. Say, yeah, absolutely would take that. And that can be achieved this season. So if that is achieved, has this been a successful season? Is it right that David Moyes has kept on? That's the big question. And that's where I'm so torn, because arguably you could go, well, yeah, he's got to surely be given another chance. But then the argument for the other side, for me, this is just my view, it's not just about that. It's not just about, you know, it's not like we've had a little bit of a blip, or things ain't quite worked out. A couple of little things. This is like there's such a big issue at this football club. The relationship with these players seems atrocious. Like, you know, the man management's awful. The relationship with the coaches seems bad. Everything, you know, the tactics are dated, and with everything, you know, the statistics are not good. They're not working hard enough. The players, all these things you're looking at, but then at the same time, where do you see it? I mean, if let's just say, Riley, you're the owner of West Ham and West Ham were in the Conference League, what do you do in the summer? Do you go for Graham Potter? Do you say, thank you, David Moyes, thank you so much, but I'm letting you go? Or do you has he earned another season? I mean, I think we all both know if that does happen, if it happens, what the club will probably do. But what would you do?
Well, I'll put it this way, Mark. Have we finished 13th in the league, or have we finished 5 points by the relegation zone? Because for me, 13th in the league is not really an achievement this season, is it? I mean, normally if you finish 13th in the league, you're a good sort of 15, 10 points above the relegation zone. Yeah. If we finish 13th, whatever team it will be we finish it maybe like 5, 6 points above the relegation zone, which is normally like 16th place, you know?
Sorry, mate. I'll tell you what I'll say then. I'll say, forget the league position. If let's just say the season finished now, the Premier League season, and we finished 3 points above the relegation zone, the season wrapped up, we're safe, we've survived but we won the Conference League, and we then we lift a trophy, we go into Europe again. What would your stance be on David Moyes? Would you still want to change the manager, or would you think, has he done enough to go, I think he's warranted another season at the club?
I mean, managers have you know, won trophies before and left because they know that their time is up and they can't give any more to the club than what they've done. Sometimes they do it because it's a nice send-off and it's like, okay, I've done everything I can do, I'm going to leave. And it's the same way with Poch when he tried to win the Champions League because that would be a good send-off for him and he could leave, and he got sacked the following season because he knew he'd run his course at the club. Regardless of whether he wins the league or not, the Conference League, that is, David Moyes has run his course at this club. There's not a lot more we can do about it. He's been on borrowed time for a very long time. I think the summer is a perfect time to get in a new manager. The way he's talking in press conferences as well, he doesn't seem like the kind of person who's sticking around. I think he was asked if the owners are, you know, good owners to work for, and he basically said, yeah, they're really good owners to work for. If a manager wanted to come in and work under them, I'd like highly recommend them and stuff. That's not something you say if you're like 1,000,000% happy in your job and stuff, you know, like someone said, oh, what's your girlfriend like? You wouldn't turn around and be like, oh, she's really lovely actually, the next boyfriend she gets, I would really recommend her. You don't say that, do you? If you want to be, you don't say that.
I love that manager, it's brilliant.
So for me it just kind of seems like he's not 100% committed to West Ham. I think he probably knows that he will be leaving at the end of the season. He's had enough chances this season to show us something new. You know, the five at the back hasn't worked. Like what direction is he going to take this team in? And I just don't see it. So for me, you've got to get someone new in. I don't really mind who it is. I don't mind taking a punt on someone like Parker or Potter. And then if we get midway,
you're going to get absolutely. By the way, just to warn you, you're going to get slated for saying Parker, because I said it a while ago. I'm not saying
I want Parker. I'm saying someone.
You did. You said you want Scott Parker.
I would much rather start the season with Scott Parker, take a punt on him, than start the season with David Moyes. And that's the honest truth. Someone like Carrick, someone like Potter. I'd much rather just take a punt, you know, take a risk. I mean, what have we got to lose? You know, fair enough if we're like halfway through the season, we're doing crap. We're just getting a manager who should be able to stabilise us. But, you know, if we're not getting relegated under Moyes, I don't see us getting relegated under many other managers with the sort of team that we've got. And at times this season, it has been that, you know, we've had big game-winning players turn up for us, and that's why we've actually stayed up. So for me, I think Moyes, no qualms with Moyes. If I could see the direction he's coming in, I mean, the fact that he just chucked in a 4-4-2 against Fulham shows that he's so out of ideas. He's just rolling every single dice possible. He doesn't know what he wants to do with the team. He hasn't got a clear vision going into the summer. So, you know, it's not like we've played crap all season and then we're playing this little system that he's got and we're just about running into form. We're going to stay up. He's literally every single game chucking different players in, just hoping something works. And for me, I think he's just run his course at the club, unfortunately. And it's time to look in a different direction in the summer, regardless of whether we win the league or not.